You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice.
We all know you're in charge. Hello, Rob.
Hello, Matt. Hail and well met to you.
Yes, hail and well met. Rob, we are like stuck on nights, and nights are stuck on me. We are full-time nights now.
We didn't plan it this way, but we've had nights on the mind. We have had nights and courtly intrigue and chivalric romances and cuirasses and longswords and lances and ribbons, all manner of things just kind of just stuck on our mind. And so we're talking about nights again.
Rob is wearing my favor that I gave him for
it's
this
not a
particular
ribbon.
episode.
It's a ratty old baseball cap, but it's Matt's favor.
It's a Houston Astros baseball cap from the 1980s, and he is my champion of Love and Beauty.
Jokes aside, I am wearing a Houston t-shirt. Anyway,
hell yeah.
But
Knights of the Great Swamp City, because we are talking, it's another installment of the Dungeon Master Book Club, the 5th or 6th installment in such series. And today we're talking about Lev Grossman's The Bright Sword.
The Bright Sword, yes. So if you think you might like to read this, save this episode, go read it, come back. If you think you won't, you just want to hear us talk about it, stick around. It's a hefty book, but I'll tell you, we'll talk more about it. But I want to say right up front, I liked it. I think it's definitely worth reading. I liked it a lot, actually. So if you think you're interested, read it, come back. But we'll give more detailed thoughts about it as we go.
If this is your first DM of None book club episode, read the book and then listen to us to talk about it as if you had a book club of Dungeon Masters talking about speculative fiction. And on the scale of our book club episodes, it's definitely in the while long, it's a page turner, and is not like, oh, this book is going to really it's no red wolf, black leopard. It's not going to tax your reading abilities. It's going to be a fun read.
This is well written, but it is not a hard read. And I sat down. I read it a bit ago, and then Matt read it read it for the first time earlier this year. And I sat down to sort of refresh my memory, and I just ended up rereading the whole thing. I was just gonna skim some parts, and I just read it again because it was that good. I was enjoying it that much. So it comes with a very high Dungeon Master of None recommendation.
Yeah, I think I read it in 2.5 days. It's a fun read. And if you're like, what is this one about? This is Lev Grossman's spin on the matter of Britain, on Arthurian tales. He did a Once and Future King to it, and it's a really good Once and Future King.
That is exactly the way to think about it. It is Lev Grossman's Once and Future King. If you are not familiar with Lev Grossman, which is fine, he is best known, I think, for writing The Magicians, which is it's grown up Harry Potter. It's Harry Potter and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but with real people and young adults. And I think it's very good. It's pretty intense. It can be grim, violent, but it's popular for a reason. They made a show out of it, which is also pretty good. Matt, have you read The Magicians?
Sexy.
It is sexy.
I've watched the show. I have not read the Magicians.
The show's very sexy.
Perfect, because I know you've read it, and I was like, I'm just gonna go straight to what I want. The Bright Sword.
Yeah, which is fine. It's good. I like the books. I like The Bright Sword better, but The Magicians is really good. I want to say though that if, as a sort of upfront caveat, if you are emotionally or otherwise attached to the magical school genre or Harry Potter, and by the same token, Arthurian legends, you may find some of the treatment unpleasant, perhaps. I think that Lev is that Grossman is a fan of both, and I don't think that he is doing a disservice to either genre.
No.
But he is doing something different with them. He is playing with them, and it's a darker take on both types of story. So if you would be upset at the idea of a darker Harry Potter or a darker King Arthur legend, a at times perhaps grimdark, but that's not entirely accurate. Then you may
No.
not love these books. I, however, think they're very good, and they are they're not a satire or a parody or anything. They're just a new take on it that I think is very smart and fun and respectful. But I've read a bunch of reviews of both of these books, and not everybody loves the thing that he's doing.
A less kind way of saying what Rob is saying is that if you're a baby and you have a baby brain and you like magical school books and you want them to all be exactly the same, and you can't deal with characters that have, I don't know, fully developed
moral complexity,
lives,
real lives,
moral complexity, sexuality that's beyond, ooh, I want to kiss a boy or a girl or something like that, then you won't deal with his books well. And so, no, it's interesting. The Magicians, I think, probably gets more of this criticism than this book because the magic school genre is aimed at YA audiences, and it is not a YA novel. Like, it does things differently.
And
it takes unexpected turns both in characters, and it's better written than YA books because it's not for children. Sorry. I like YA
you're
fiction
right.
just fine,
You're
but
right.
it's what it is. Don't have a baby brain. If you like something,
I was trying to be nicer.
But that being said, we're coming from the perspective of we really like these books. And I think the other like non-spoilery thing we can say is that if you're into, we've talked about this in all our DM book clubs. If you want to DM well, you got to like feed your engine of creativity through like, being creative, engaging with the arts. And I think this book is really good if you want any sort of campaign that deals with knights and castles and kings and queens and stuff, but specifically if you want anything that deals with like that weird fairy tale, poetic, mythic fantasy where weird stuff happens. And if you want to figure out a way to like get those juices flowing, this is a great book specifically for that.
We have talked about this, and in the same way that a filmmaker should read books and a novelist should watch movies, and playwright should do both. As a GM, if you want your stories, your campaigns and your games to be interesting, you want to have fuel for the fire, then reading books is good. Watching movies.
Do you like my take on what sort of fuel for what kind of fires? Are there any other types of games that this book is especially good kindling for?
I mean, I think what I think is really good about this book is, and we'll talk about this, the characters. There are a lot of like really rich characters that you can use as inspiration. It is, I agree with Matt, best if you're doing any kind of like fantasy RPG, even like remotely adjacent. Obviously, if you're running something like Mythic Bastionlands, this is something that you want to have in your back pocket. But if you're doing D&D, if you're doing Dungeon World, if you're doing anything even remotely fantastic with knights, this is the kind of thing that is best fuel for. But as we'll talk, I think there's a lot that you can pull from for just about anything.
Yeah. Okay. Goodbye to everyone who hasn't read the book yet. Should we jump into it?
Let's jump into it.
Where do you want to start? I think characters might be a good one, or we could start with what kind of take on the matter of Britain this one is.
Let's do that and then jump into characters, because listeners will know, because we talked about this on either A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms or Mythic Bastionlands or both. I, Rob, am a big matter of Britain nerd. It's one of my many special interests, less so recently, but there was a time when I went through the Mort to Arthur and the Once and Future King, and it really
by Tommy
like
Mallory,
by good old Tommy, good
Thomas Mallory,
Tommy Mallory and T.H. White. Sorry, I was trying to remember.
Also Thomas White. I think.
Also, right? I was gonna say, so that's what got stuck on. I was like, is it Thomas H. White? Anyway, I love these things. I think honestly, part of this started with, of all things, the Dark Tower, which has its own take on some of like the knight Arthurian legend. So I read a bunch of these original myths, Gawain and the Green Knight, all that, and it's all really weird. And it's been the matter of Britain. The story of King Arthur and his knights has been covered by dozens of English and French and other authors. Every poet worth their salt in the 19th century decided to have a go at Lancelot and Galahad and all that. So there's a lot to draw from here. So I want to say that I'm a fan of all those things, and I was also a fan of this. So like, it's not like if you like Arthur, you won't like this unless you're really very, very, very serious about precisely what type of Arthur legend you're reading. But I thought this was good and respectful to the source material.
I have a hard time imagining someone who's like, well, I like King Arthur's stuff, but it has to be this one way, because every tale, even the like kind of oldest sources that some of these are drawing from, presents everything in such a radically different light. We're all constantly remixing, chopping, and screwing these tales up. And I think, if you're like wanting to orient yourself, Lev Grossman's take is like, hey, what if an American wrote about this
basically
in 2010s, 2020s? And that's it definitely, feels as if it's the contemporary moment looking back, which all of these tales are. And I think that's really cool.
They are all of their moment, yes.
And it's also a tale that is super interesting in that it's going to assume that you not assume that you read the Once and Future King and Le Morte d'Arthur and some of the like medieval chronicles and stuff like that, but like you've seen the Wishbone episode about it, or watched, or you like watched
The Sword in the Stone or part of it.
If you've done that, know enough, and I think everyone does, and so it's way more refreshing, at least to me, than some of the other tales as a fun read, because it's like, hey, we know who Arthur and Guinevere and Lancelot are, and so we'll come at the tale from a completely different perspective and just add new things. And you can almost tack the bright sword on to many of the other tellings of the matter of Britain, and it kind of plays better and worse with some of them, but it's fun that way.
Well, this will get us to characters and sort of like what type of story it is, because the entire thing, which I think is clever, is that this takes place after the death of Arthur. This begins basically right after the final battle with what's the battle called?
Mordred.
Final battle with Mordred, where Arthur dies, and the only knights that are actively present in the story are kind of C tier, knights like Bedivere and Constantine and Dragonet and
Dinadan. Yeah, third stringers that only appear as like foils in not even the most like famous stories.
Not even the most,
they're real.
They're real hangers on. They're real, also Rans.
Everything that wasn't like written in the like 7th century and is now lost in Welsh, in old Welsh, is just Arthurian fanfic, right? And Lev Grossman has embraced that and like, hey, I'm gonna write some fanfic after the end of most of the tales with some of the third stringers. Some, of course, hey, eventually we're gonna get meet Morgan Le Fay and Mordred and Lancelot and Guinevere, but we're going to start with the nobodies, which is amazing.
And like Matt said, it sort of assumes like a base familiarity with some of the legends, because Galahad and Lancelot and King Arthur and Guinevere and whatever, they do make some appearance in the story, but they're mostly just sort of like haunting the narrative, right? They're there, but like not mostly their impact on these surviving knights. And you don't have to know much about those stories, but it does sort of improve it a bit when you have the context. Like, this is, Galahad's not around because the Grail took him up to heaven when he found it, because he is literally the perfect knight. And
he's
Gawain
a perfect boy.
Here.
He's a perfect disappeared.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob, are you a magical boy or a regular boy?
I'm just a regular boy, Matt.
Damn. All right, going back to eating my dinner.
Let's talk about our main character, because this is also like a real clever thing. We've got an outsider coming to the table. Colum,
Sir Colum later,
of the Out Isles of Mull, well, let's just say it. Colum is an awful lot like Sir Duncan the Tall. He is a big,
Yeah.
strong, big-hearted dumb boy who's real good at fighting and not much good at anything else. And we love that. Honestly, he's a great protagonist because he doesn't know a goddamn thing, which means everyone can explain what's going on to him. And I don't know, you want to root for him because he all he wants is to be a knight. All he wants is to be a good boy knight.
He wants to, brings a little bit of light to this dark ages in Britain, and that's it. And then he's kind of there to bring our slightly more interesting, smart, and proactive characters into the story by just showing up late to the party. The round table is done, it is kaput, and but that's the thing. Life goes on. What happens? And we're still in a weird magical land.
Right. There's still adventures to be had. There's still a round table. There's still a few knights, and someone has to be king, right? King Arthur is dead. He left no heir. Mordred is dead. Also, Mordred is illegitimate. He had no children with Guinevere. So who is going to sit upon the throne of Britain? Who will reign in Camelot? And that is kind of the sort of like central question of the whole book, though the book is about a lot of other things, but that is sort of the driving action is who are we going to put on the throne now that Arthur is dead and left no heirs.
This is also a great book for inspiration of telling a bunch of Canterbury Tales style tales in the middle of this story. So throughout the book we're introduced to characters, and then we get kind of their story or a snippet of their life before this fall. And I love this as an inspiration for role-playing games. No one wants to hear anyone's backstory before things have happened, but once things are going on, it's fun to kind of be like, hey, what is the thing that brought your net runner to this crew? And then let's find that out later. And this applies to this book and to role-playing games.
Yeah, these are maybe my favorite part of the book, and they're basically short stories about each of the knights who survived, about Bedivere and Palomides and Dinadan and Dragonet and so on, and they appear in between moments of action. And Matt's right. Something that is sort of hard to work into a role-playing game, but I think is worth trying for, is to have your players just start playing, even if they know their backstory. And then once they've established themselves in play, the players have gotten to know each other, the party has grown a little bit, then you can have some backstory reveal. I also think that it's a lot of fun to find out elements of your backstory through play. And that's not what's happening in the Bright Sword, but it's sort of like an example of how it might look if you were going to do this form of narrative in your game. I couldn't agree more. The last thing that anybody wants at this point is to sit down for a session 1 or a session 0 and hear a long, elaborate story about everybody. But having those delivered intermittently after a session or 2, I think is a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Once you're invested, right? Once you're invested in the character, this is what makes it, I think, more interesting.
Here's a quick rundown of our warriors personae. We've got Sir Bedivere, the unrequited love of King Arthur, who's been his first knight and most loyal defender. He's only got one hand. Sir Scipio, who's a time traveler from the Lost Legion of Rome. Sir Dagonet, the fool, who's made a knight as a joke and suffers from depression.
Nimue clearly has clinical depression.
Clinical depression, which no one can treat. Not even witches like Nimue, Merlin's apprentice, who is here picking up the pieces of Merlin's arrogance. Sir Dinadan, trained by faeries, and a trans man who is hiding that secret in his armor. And then let's see, am I missing one? Sir Constantine.
Sir Constantine, a foppish, well-meaning potential king, but mostly just a very middling knight. And not much to recommend him. One of those C-listers.
And then those are like main characters who will eventually run into Merlin and Guinevere and Lancelot and some of the other
and Palomides.
survivors.
Palomides
is my favorite character in this.
One of my favorite knights, even before this, and he's the Saracen, right? He's canonically a Muslim who sat at the round table. Grossman makes him black and from Baghdad, which Grossman puts in his notes didn't actually like exist for another 2 centuries after the theoretical time of Arthur, but who cares? Not me, and certainly not Lev Grossman, but Palomides.
And not the authors who invented Palomides, right?
That's right.
Which
They
happened
didn't,
1,000
they sure
years
didn't
ago,
know
so,
about Baghdad.
Yeah.
It's actually he's one of my
He's a great
favorites.
character because he's like, hey, I actually know math, unlike any of you people.
I highlighted something. He makes a joke about like 0 at some point, and one of the other knights is like, "What the fuck is a 0?" Which is just like, is a little treat for us nerds. But yeah, Palomides is great. He's like 4th son of some prince in Baghdad, and so he's like, fine, I'm gonna go see what's going on in Britain. And he gets there, and he's like, this sucks. But then he falls in love with Isolde of Tristram and Isolde, and like we mentioned, he's the sort of like foil in that story. But this makes him sort of gives him a whole story and background and personality of his own, which is terrific. I love Palomides.
Yeah. And then I think, is there any other major character things you want to discuss or introduce? Because I have something about the tone of this book, which I think is
great. Let's talk about the tone. Those are our main characters. There's others, but let's go through it.
So if you were taking it uncharitably, there is a little bit of like current pop blockbuster movie tone, like our joke about, hey, are you Magic Boy or regular boy when like Galahad shows up, because we're just used to this at the same time. But it makes the book so there's a little bit of a so that happened. I can't believe we're in the fairyland now. To it, but because Lev Grossman doesn't suck at writing, in fact, he's actually quite good at it. It works really well, in my opinion, and I think it's a great source of encouragement and like inspiration, because if you ever have to run a game where things are set in Roman times or medieval times or fantasy medieval times, and people are supposed to be talking in some more epic kind of way, it shows you how it's okay if they talk like people in 2024, like when this book came out, because it still works.
You have to be careful about this. I agree with Matt. I think it works because Grossman is a good writer, and you can get away with some like quips if they are well written. I highlighted a few examples of this. At one point, Bedivere says, "I'm getting too old for this shit," which in the moment I thought worked pretty
actually
well.
Landed, because he
is getting too old for this shit. There's another moment where Callum is talking to Morgan Le Fay, and she says, "Not now, Callum. I need a grown up," which was really fucking funny, which was like in the moment hilarious. Morgan Le Fay is probably the one who like is the closest to fourth wall breaking to like using purely modern language, which I liked. T.H. White does something similar with Merlin in The Once a Future King, because Merlin lives his life backwards and he's seen the future, so he uses a lot. I think it's a clever bit. So if you are expecting a book full of these and thous and courtly language, you will be disappointed by The Bright Sword. My sort of take on that, though, is that it's incredibly hard to do well and sounds tedious and inauthentic unless you are a very good writer. So it's not like Lev Grossman is like throwing in a bunch of modern terms. Like, it sounds neutral enough most of the time that you can imagine these being knights or this being Latin translated into English, but he does not go to great lengths to make them sound precisely as if they are speaking in the Canterbury Tales, which I think is a good choice. But again, it only works if you're a good writer, and I've seen people do this wrong in both directions. It's a lot more common to get the sort of like Whedon language mistake in books like these, and I don't think Grossman falls prey to it, but he really like toes the line, and if you have a really low tolerance for that, you may find it annoying, but it worked for me. I thought it was very funny.
Yeah,
it's a funny book.
And, I mean,
it's not always funny, but
always this type of stuff always works at my table, right? Your mileage may vary, but when one of my players says in their character's voice, "I'm getting too old for this shit,"
It's funny.
It almost never fails to land because we're all just having fun together. So it's, I think, a great encouragement. Let your players talk normally. If they're in a weird world, it will work fine at your table.
Agreed.
I think the other really big picture thing is, I think this book does the weirdness of like ancient or medieval pre-modern descriptions of magic and God and the supernatural, and presents it in a just a fun way.
I agree. And we touched on this when we talked about the movie The Green Knight, which I liked a lot, and I thought also did a good job of capturing that ethereal, that weird, that uncertain mysticism of the pre-modern era. And I think that
this is the Green Knight if the Green Knight had some friends. Or sorry, if Sir Gawain had some friends.
Yeah.
There's friends hanging out and they're growing on each other. And the Green Knight, he's all alone. He gets really sad.
Yeah, if Garwin had somebody hanging out with him, this is what that would be. But the thing that people can be forgiven for not knowing this, but I think many books and movies have delivered an incorrect idea of like what medieval and pre-modern belief looked like, and it's weird, it's uncertain, it's mystical, it's rooted in things that we don't understand because we don't have the framework to understand it. I'm not suggesting that like pre-modern people had like different brains than we do, but their belief systems are rooted in different types of behaviors and beliefs and forms of knowledge than we have. And so when you read something from like the 7th or 8th century, it may not like make a lot of sense, like how things work. And the Green Knight story is a great example of this, because it's sort of hard to figure out like what the point is, but it's about
hospitality, maybe
hospitality, right? It's about how you treat your guests. It's about honor and correct behavior in the home of a host, and it's weird. And the same for like a lot of the like really old Arthur tales. It's like you're chasing a beast and then something super weird happens.
And gods there, but also magic and fairies.
Yeah, there's a flaming something, or an icy pond with something at the bottom of it, or a weird shining object, and there's no clear answer. It's just a sign, and that's great if you're willing to. I'm honest. I think this is terrific. I have embraced not knowing. Sorry, Matt, this is an aside, but I was thinking about this because I like this stuff. I like not knowing. I don't feel burdened. I don't feel like I need the burden of like having an answer for everything. So like when I read a book like The Bright Sword and some weird stuff happens, or I watch The Green Knight and some weird stuff happens and there's no clear answer, that doesn't bother me. But I was sharing a stupid meme with my brother-in-law that was absurdist, and he was like, I don't get it. And I was like, well, there's nothing to get. It's it's a horse, but the words are spelled wrong and there's rainbows. Look, you don't think this is funny? And I'm just like,
these medieval tales are cow tools to
that's
a lot of
that's
a lot of
precisely
us,
what I'm
right?
saying.
Like it's the cow tool problem. It's funny. Why?
It's funny. It just is. It just is.
That's
and
what a cow would make as tools.
I guess that's what I'm saying is like maybe that's not for everyone, but like I think it could be. But I'm trying to acknowledge that like maybe my brain is cooked by too much time on the internet or reading too many weird things. But I think this stuff is great. But you have to go into it with an open mind and accepting that there's not going to be some clear answer, and there's going to be a weird quest, and at the end everyone's going to be like, well, what was the point of that? And who knows? You grew and learned and had a good story.
I think the role playing advantage of putting weird mystical wackiness to our eyes in your magic setting is that your players and you at the table are usually pretty good at coming up with what this means, and you probably have like an easy way to be like, well, this will lead you to the next place, in the story or location. And, so like connecting those dots can be a lot easier than if, let's say, you're a middle French poet or something like that.
Right. Well, on a meta level too, a fun and I think delightful thing about this book is that many of the characters love going on adventures for adventure's sake. Like they don't really care about like what's at the end of it, but there's all these moments where like a weird animal shows up and says something, or there's a portal in the wall, or there's you find yourself at a strange castle and someone's like, "Great, we're on an adventure." Just
Right.
the act of adventuring is worthwhile in and of itself, which I couldn't agree with more. And that's the thing that I like about my role-playing games. Sure, there's experience and loot and you tell a story, but like the adventure is worth doing because it's an adventure, you know?
Right. I think the other like big thing about the structure of this book is, the way it presents the characters with this concept of, guess what? A threshold has been crossed. No longer are there, medieval hovels and hill forts and people raising like black-nosed sheep. There's a weirdness. There's a talking animal. There's a stream flowing backwards. There's a giant floating rock with ruins on it. There's a portal to the other world, the Fey Wild. And now we're adventuring, and it's just a reminder that like, hey, it's okay to like let your players step out their front door and for that to happen right away.
Yeah, you can just have an adventure. There could be something weird right there.
What do you want to talk about next? Maybe some of that weirdness, visits to the other world, the logic of this. I love the way that this book combines biblical like mythology, like angels and gods, with old pagan
Fairy.
Britain, gods and fairy creatures, with just, and also stuff that like I don't know where this fits in. This animal just talks. What is the questing beast? No one really knows in the Arthurian tales. I'm going to put it in here and see if my players can come up with a fun thing for it to be.
Yeah. There's a few main quests, and I love all of them just as adventure structures. There's a classic column shows up, and everyone's like, "Well, what do we do now? How do we get Arthur back?" And then they fast for a bit, and then the Green Knight shows up. A Green Knight,
right? It's a real example of let your players just say, "Hey, do anything." Okay, we sit here and don't eat. Perfect. I'll make up something to go along
exactly.
with that.
It's like that's a good idea. Sure, we'll say that works. Here's a Green Knight, and then they have to beat the Green Knight because that's what you do. And then the Green Knight leads them on an adventure where they go
after
to
brutally killing one of the knights, just to remind us
right.
we're in a Lev Grossman story. And then I love this interpretation of a Green Knight, which is a bunch of branches stuffed in armor with a magic squirrel operating it all. Steal that.
Yes.
Put that into any fantasy game. A bunch of twigs in an armor with a squirrel in the center. The squirrel's friendly. The Green Knight is not.
Right. They follow the Green Knight around. It takes them to the other world, where they meet Morgan Le Fay. Great character. She wants to be Queen of Britain and has a tenuous claim because she's Arthur's half-sister. And they also find they're going because they hear there's one of the Knights of the Round Table there. They find Sir Kay, another third-tier C-lister who is having a bad time. They encounter some giants and a bunch of weird creatures in the other world. There's a glass castle. It's great. It's just like you could imagine something like Mythic Bastionland, where you're just sort of like rolling on a table of like locations. Like, okay, first it's Cornwall, then it's a river in the other world, then it's a glass castle, and then. But it follows logically. It's just it's got that mystic fairy logic. It's like, why is the glass castle here? Who cares? Doesn't matter. It's there.
This is such a great thing to steal for your fantasy games, like especially Dungeons and Dragons, Numenera. And the Wheel of Time does this a lot, and this book does it exactly once, though to great effect. Is imagine describing a real place in the modern world to as best as you can without using any modern references to your players, and that will give it a weird mystic thing. I think you can read the Trip to the Otherworld and the Glass Castle as describing a modern city. And it works really well. Is that Lev Grossman's intention? I don't know. But that means it worked, I think.
I got that impression from Morgan Le Fay, and everything that she did was something maybe modern was happening, but Grossman leaves it vague enough that you can draw your own interpretations. I agree, use this sparingly, but it can be cool, especially for a science fantasy game. Describe a modern thing without using any like modern terms. So that's one adventure. They have another adventure where they seek the spear of Longinus, the spear that pierced the side of Jesus Christ. This is, like Matt said, a great combination of both sort of pagan fairy mythology and Christian iconography and faith rolled into one. The spear is a classic questing item, an artifact never found. Always a good thing to send your knights after.
Yeah. And do they know exactly how this is going to help them? No, not really.
No.
But it doesn't matter. They need something to do after they defend their castle from like an attack, right? Which is also a great thing to steal for your games. If you've got a lull, enemy forces have surrounded your players' strongholds. Time to go defend them.
They have to defend it.
Also, a great description of a wizard in a medieval battle and how useful they would or would not be of Nimue,'s fight with the invaders.
Yeah, she blows up a bunch of guys. Actually, all of the fight scenes are very good. If you like a good Game of Thrones fight scene, if you liked the sort of gritty, brutal, close up view of a fight that you get in something like A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, this has it. Callum is always. He usually comes out on top. He's a big, tough lad, but he is getting his ass kicked 75% of the time. Stuff is clanging off of his helmet and, mashing his mail into his side and all of this. It does not glorify combat, but they're thrilling, riveting descriptions of battles with knights.
Yeah. No, armor doing serious work in this story, protecting people, which is really nice. So they go on the quest for the questing spear, and then we sort of figure out like, hey, Lancelot and Guinevere are still around, and they're gonna have to, and Merlin is imprisoned under the earth, but he's still alive. Eventually all these people are gonna have to be brought in, and either as allies or maybe they're actually enemies.
Yeah, I liked the interpretation of Lancelot and Guinevere and of Merlin. I liked how they were sort of looming. There's all these questions about who will they support, who do they want to be king. Does Lancelot want to be king? He's sort of a king. He's Frankish, but he's got royal blood. He could be king, and nobody can agree. Nobody can agree on whether or not Lancelot actually is an adulterer with Guinevere, whether or not Guinevere is an adulterer herself. Everyone has sort of strong feelings, which prevents the remaining knights from agreeing on who should be king, which is why they have to go seek the spear of Longinus, which might somehow tell them who should be king. It'll glow and point at the king, and then they won't have to make a decision. But that's it's funny.
Look,
right? Like
you can say no basis for a system of government, all that, but it makes sense in the logic of the story. And the problems. I think the story does a good job of escalating. Like, hey, boom, big shocker. Arthur's dead. The Round Table is just a band of very cool misfits. Boom, actually, all the other kings are in rebellion. Boom. the faeries are all riled up for some reason. Boom, the Saxons are invading, right? You know,
Right.
it just things keep getting worse. And so, you know, this is a great way to structure your like fantasy story is have like 5 or 6 bad things that
Yeah.
are gonna just keep happening. And deal them out to your players 1 or 2 sessions at a time.
I mean, I will say, and this does not bother me in the least, but like technically not a lot happens plot wise. I have seen this
No.
complaint in some of the reviews. Like it's once again, it is a
This is a
It
meet
is-
the characters book.
yes, and it is a book where you are getting to know the people and the land, and a lot of interesting stuff happens. But like it's not plot heavy. There's not a lot of these these quests kind of don't go anywhere, which I think is sort of the point. But if you are expecting a sweeping epic fantasy tale with twists and turns and there is a dramatic conclusion, but like this is not this is not Wheel of Time, this is not Way of Kings, it's not really even Game of Thrones. I think it's great, but if that's what you're looking for, it's a different kind of story.
And this is not what I'm looking for. And why I want to recommend this book to dungeon masters is while they do go on like 5 or 6 quests and have some kind of resolution to some of them, this story is a great story to hold in your mind when thinking about your role-playing games. It's because it's mostly about hanging out with these cool characters. And that's what we mostly do in most of our role-playing games.
Well, and this is one of the classic pieces of GM advice is like prep situations, prep characters, don't prep plots. You can have a plot, but you're going to get more mileage out of, like Matt said, here's a thing that can happen if there's a lull, right? Here's something to throw at your characters. Here's a thing that you can introduce when there's a quiet moment or when you need to buy some time. And that makes a great story. That honestly makes a great story in and of itself.
You can imagine this book as a game master giving to our cast of knights and Nimue five problems. Arthur is dead. All the other kings of Britain are in revolt. Saxons are invading. Faeries are doing weird stuff. What do you want to do? And like 2 of those like never really get addressed. It's like, the characters didn't care about that. They cared about finding a new king and dealing with the fairies. Okay,
right,
cool.
yes.
That's what our game's about. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah,
we'll have one
that's
battle to represent that the kings are rebelling, and that'll be a nice break. But we won't resolve that because my characters didn't deal with that situation that I plopped in front of them. We'll deal with many of the other ones. We got plenty of stuff to do here.
Right. And yeah, it is just like, it's a wonderful book, like Matt said, because you're hanging out with these very interesting characters. I think, the idea of the dregs of the round table is just such a fun idea, because these are still great, interesting knights. They're not Galahad, they're not Lancelot. And I think the thing that Grossman is getting at that I'm probably in agreement with is that like Lancelot and Galahad and those guys are less interesting because they're too good, too perfect, right? Tell us more about the losers. Tell us more about the deeply imperfect bottom tier knights. Like, what do they get up to? What do they care about? What are their stories?
Yeah, tell us more about dumb knight who showed up too late, apprentice Nimue, sad gay knight, hilarious trans knight, depressed fool knight, stuck out of time Roman knight.
Yeah, tell us about these weirdos. Give us a lovable cast of weirdos. That's also like a great way to think about your games. Is all you're doing is fostering an environment for a lovable cast of weirdos, and something like a Arthurian quest is a great environment for your weirdos to thrive in. But it could be anything, right? It could be any number of situations, and there's plenty of combat, and they all do just fine by themselves, but they're not the best fighters, and so they are not doing the most fighting. But there's honestly, like, it does strike me as a very interesting and well written, or part of a an RPG campaign, because there's regular combat, because there has to be, but there's also just like a lot of problem solving and a lot of weird NPCs that you have to talk to, and quests that you have to overcome in whatever way seems appropriate, which is sometimes clever and sometimes not.
Ooh, can we talk about magic and Merlin? And I love this book for one particular reason, which is I've always seen Merlin as a slightly villainous person. And this book makes him into just the ultimate scheming bastard megalomaniac character, and it makes perfect sense from like if you want to interpret the stories in a certain way, and having this the time traveling immortal Atlantean wizard be the bad guy works. One of the bad guys works so well.
Yeah, I liked this too. This is another thing that
we even get a wizard duel. That's just so good.
You get a wizard duel. It's a really good wizard duel. This is another thing I think that some people didn't like.
Yeah.
I did. I thought it was good.
What?
It doesn't hurt my feelings. They're attached to Merlin. They like Merlin. They like Merlin from the Sword and the Stone. They like Merlin from the Pendragon cycle, Matt. They
Yeah, he's not interesting unless you do something else with him. And what about you just make him into a rat bastard?
And I like this interpretation. He's a druid, right? An Atlantean wizard, and he grovels and prostrates himself before the Romans when they come, so they don't kill him, and he's the only one who survives. And then he just lamprey-like attaches himself to whoever's the most powerful, which is how he survives so long. And he's he's sexually
behind the
assaulted anyway.
scenes, manipulating things.
He's just like a power-hungry, gross, grasping old man with no loyalties to anyone except the most powerful, and it's a terrifying villain and just like a real guy you love to hate.
You do. And I love the and I think this is another like key thing to steal interpretation of like medieval Britain spirits and gods is like, hey, if you do a thing, a favor for these entities, winds or spirits of water or trees, is like you can call upon them to have an action happen. And in a role-playing game, that's like such a great, like, here's your one-time card ability to call upon the spirit of the west wind to do a thing for you.
The magic is only mostly hinted at, but I love the way that the Grossman thinks about this, and you can tell that this is an interest of his because it's similar in the Magicians, but magic always has a cost, and sometimes it's as simple as you have to sacrifice a rabbit or something, but sometimes it is you did a favor for a river, or this is a spell you can only do once a year, or you have to go through all these like insane elaborate steps to like find the magic word that you need. And it doesn't ever feel like inconsistent, but it always feels like, yeah, this is going to be, you can't just like do magic, right? You gotta earn it or work for it or pay for it somehow. And there's lots of that's not like an original idea, but the way that he does it in this book, I think is really fun. I think it's like a really like great model for magic.
Yeah, no, and a great model for putting weird campaign rewards into any fantasy campaign. I just found it. We were talking about the quest for the Holy Lance, and this line of dialogue from Sir Bedivere is perfect. This is a character at your table. Well, the thing of it is, no one ever came right out and told us we had to find the Holy Lance, did they? I mean, to say, it's not as though we got a sword in the stone or a Holy Grail, and the stone had some instructions on it. We got a glowing button with a stick on it. That's all. It's not much to go on, is it? They kind of realize, oh yeah, is this actually going to help us find the king? My players do stuff like this all the time, and we just roll with it. And
it's great.
That's the part that made me laugh out loud.
I love that part because it's like, yeah, well, of course, if we find the spear, it'll tell us what to do. Like, that's what you do. Like, no one told us that, but what else are you supposed to do? I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. I would say, again, this is a great fuel for any fantasy story for a DM. Are there any other things in this book that you thought were just really fun ways of constructing things that are just fun to steal for your table?
I mean, there's a lot of cool, I think, inspirations for like magic items or magic boons. We already talked about like getting a favor from like a special wind or a river or a tree spirit or something. But there's a bunch of magic swords and armors and horns and things. They're alluded at, and they're not like super central to the story. But the Arthur legends are also full of this stuff.
Yeah.
Minor magical items that aren't going to like break your game, but are like great inspirations, things that will stop bleeding or, help you see a little bit further, very, very simple magic items, but great inspiration for things to steal for your campaign.
I also think this book is a great source of just characters. Any book that's well written is going to have good characters. And two that I want to highlight that if you read this book, you'll be able to mix and remix into NPCs is Morgan Le Fay. Writing fae or fairy NPCs or villains can always be a little tricky because it's like, what are they actually trying to accomplish? And with a half fae, 1 foot in and 1 foot out of the other world and ours, gives a character like more clear goals. And Morgan has clear goals, even if she's hiding them from the player characters, which can help you as the GM run that type of character. And I gotta love a villain who thinks he is perfect and pure and good, but is just an asshole. And that's what we get in Sir Lancelot here.
Yes, I loved Morgan Le Fay too. I thought she was one of the best characters, a great antagonist or villain, potential ally,
ally.
And I thought that Lancelot made such a good villain because, of course, he did. And the description of him is just like an empty. At one point, he's described as like an empty well, just like a bottomless pit that he's trying to fill with anything, and the only thing that could possibly fill that emptiness is God. If he can find him, if he can convince God that he's worthy, and he is evil, of course,
doing
but like
monstrous things to just get God to notice him.
Yeah, he is evil, but you understand why he is evil. That there's just like something broken in him, something missing that he is trying to fill, and he made a great twist villain in the last third of the book.
Yeah, love it. It's one of a strong recommendation, I think, from both Rob and I to add this to your DM book club. 6th entry in our DM book club series done. Rob, I'll leave us with the final lines of the book from my second favorite character in the whole book, Sir Dinadan. Sir Dinadan looked up at the empty clouds, and as he died, he wondered, not for the first time, but for the very last, why it should be that we are made for a bright world, but live in a dark one.
Great book. Thank you for listening, everybody. If you liked this, send us an email at dmofnone@gmail.com. Check out the link in the show notes for socials, our Discord. If you want to hear more and want to support the show, head over to patreon.com/dungeonmasterofnone. Thanks for listening, everybody, and keep rolling them dice.